Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Football Diary podcast and Happy New Year to you, our listeners. It's been great to have you on board with this journey this year. Let's talk about some football, shall we? The last round of 2024, the last podcast of 2024, one where we finish with Ipswich winning their first home game of the season, better late than never. Manchester United reaching probably their lowest point in my lifetime. Forest lead probably at their highest point in my lifetime, second in the Premier League going into the new year. Great for them. We'll be talking about all those things, as well as obviously a little bit of an Aston Villa section there too. Myles is with me today. How are you, Myles? You doing good?
Yeah, not too bad. A bit frustrated by yesterday's game, but I feel like I say that too often on the podcast at the moment.
You're frustrated. You're frustrated.
Good point. Sorry.
Anyway, we'll get to United at some point because their 2-0 defeat to Newcastle was I think, a moment, a turning point, whatever you want to call it, amongst many over the last few years. But let's start with something incredibly positive, which I think is Ipswich 2, Chelsea 0, against a really informed Chelsea team who have wobbled a bit in the last couple of games, I think it's fair to say. But Ipswich, first home win of the season, as I say, it was massively deserved as well, wasn't it, mate? I think Delap has had another absolute worldie, a player that's got a bright future ahead of him. But this was a great team effort from them, wasn't it?
Yeah, it definitely was. And I think the fact that they started the game so quickly and got themselves ahead quite early on in the match really set the tone for them as well. They didn't need to dominate the ball. They didn't need to create bundles of chances. They just needed to be clinical when they did get forward. And when you've got players like Hutchinson and Delap who were on the top of their game and really turned up for this one, it's quite easy to be clinical, it seems. Yeah, they were fantastic.
Well, Delap scored and assisted in the same game for the second time this season. I think he's the first Ipswich player to do that since Finidi George about 20 years ago.
Wow.
Which is a cute little stat. But no, Delap's brilliant, isn't he? And I think Ipswich are one of those teams that are obviously still in trouble. But when they do well, when it clicks, it seems to look really good. And I think they're one of the only promoted teams I think they've got a chance of escaping, I think, based on form, but also the way they play football. And this win will do them the world of good. Now, there was some controversy over the penalty award. There's minimal contact there from Jorgensen on Delap, I think. But even VAR looked at it and said it was still a penalty. What are your thoughts on that? Contact is contact, right?
Yeah, and you see that so often in the box where the keeper rushes out and mistimes it slightly. It wasn't a great deal, but the striker's there to make the most of it, isn't he? And he's always going to do that. I think the fact that Delap was so quick to react to the ball through in the first place and to get there ahead shows a lot of his qualities. His physicality is incredible. He's actually a lot quicker than maybe someone of his build would look. And I think we think of his dad, and immediately you don't necessarily get this picture of a kind of footballer coming from it. It's a weird kind of legacy in the Delap family. But he's fantastic. And I think Chelsea would really benefit from a player like him in their own ranks, to be honest. And it's funny seeing Hutchinson score against them as well, a former player. There's a lot to admire about this Ipswich team. And they're definitely not out of it, are they? I mean, they're 5 points off Palace.
Yeah.
So that means there's 3 teams within that sort of range for them that they could pull into the conversation. And wins like this, statement victories against bigger opposition, are the things that a lot of times newly promoted sides build their season off. That can be the launch pad for them. And getting that first home win was always going to be massive. But for it to come against this level of opposition, it's really encouraging for them.
Liam Delap's style is interesting, isn't he, as a number 9, because there's a lot of physicality involved. He's such a hulking great player, isn't he? Really tall, really physical, really, really strong. Who does he remind you of? What kind of playing style do you think he is? Because he looks to me like a bit of a Harry Kane almost. He's quite mobile. He kind of draws attackers in, and other team members play off him. Maybe sort of shades of Evan Ferguson at Brighton as well for his touch. He's an interesting one, isn't he?
Yeah, he's almost like Shearer-esque to me, the way that he's able to finish chances off, and his kind of movement is very intelligent. But he's just got a bit of pace to him that we haven't really seen from the likes of Kane in that way. But it's funny making that comparison already, because it does feel like if he continues on this trajectory, then he's kind of the heir to Kane's England throne in one way or another. I think he'll definitely be someone that Thomas Tuchel has to have a look at in terms of next sort of squads for England, because he's performing at the top level now in a really difficult team that aren't getting a lot of chances. It wouldn't surprise me if a lot of teams are looking at him in January. I think that's probably not achievable for Ipswich to let him go at that stage. But in the summer, he could move on again. It wouldn't surprise me if he kind of jumped up to that next level once again, because he's got that about him, hasn't he?
Yeah, great attacking talent, as is Omari Hutchinson, as we mentioned. Not holding back with his celebration, is he, in the backflip against his old club. But Chelsea, the second game in a row where I think they created plenty. I think it was 20 shots they had, but only 5 on target.
Yeah.
Loads of missed opportunities, and they should have really scored at least one, I think. So they'll be gutted. But Enzo Maresca was quite upbeat considering. I think he knows that Chelsea are at a level. I think he's realistic that they're not league title challengers yet. But based on the table, yes, they were. So it's a bit disappointing, I think, for neutrals to see Liverpool streak ahead and Chelsea not continue that run in some ways. But Chelsea, there's nothing to worry about there, is there? They're still pretty decent and they've just got to convert better. And I think that's where Ipswich kind of won the game, really, isn't it? Just being clinical.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Chelsea rotated their attacking options again. Obviously, they brought Nkunku and Felix into the team. And that constant changeover, and Madueke came back as well, obviously. That constant changeover in the attacking positions is going to be something that they've got to manage. They've got so many players that they need to keep happy and rotate in the squad. They seem to have done quite well so far. But if you miss that consistency and that chemistry, sometimes that can lead you to fall a bit short in front of goal. And they need to work out what their best attacking lineup is, really, because there are several players that could come into that conversation. Like we didn't see Jackson, Neto, or Sancho start this game, and you could argue that's their best front three. So it's going to be a funny one for Chelsea to balance. I find it interesting because actually there's 19 games in now, and we're talking about Chelsea looking very good. This 19 games, they've got a worse record than Pochettino's last 19 games for Chelsea in the Premier League. So they've dropped slightly since the start of last season, which is to be expected. You've got a new coach, new players coming in. But you do wonder whether this constant chop and changing of both the coaching staff and the playing squad will catch up on them and stop them from really challenging for the top honours as we kind of thought they might do earlier in the season.
Potentially. I think when you do drop a couple of results like this, when you are challenging for higher in the league, you do start to look below you rather than above you. And I think that's the fear, isn't it, for Chelsea, that suddenly they look at the top four and go, whoa, hang on, we were comfortable a couple of weeks ago and now this team's coming up behind us. Teams like Newcastle. I know I was trying to segue into that in the most positive way, but credit to Newcastle. They beat United at Old Trafford, which is a rare thing for Newcastle lately. In my lifetime, that rarely happens. And yeah, it was a comprehensive win. One of the most comprehensive first halves of football I've seen as a Man United fan against us ever. It was shocking from United's perspective. But let's talk about Newcastle first, because they took the game to United well and truly.
Yeah.
The first half an hour, forcing into so many errors, taking brilliant advantage of that. And sometimes I think getting a bit cocky, to their credit. They looked like they were cruising at one point. Should have put the game to bed, I think. So I think fans were probably a bit angry they didn't. And the second half, they did kind of drop off and ease up a little bit, which let United back in terms of possession. So what do you make of Newcastle's performance, first of all, mate?
They look confident at the moment, don't they? I mean, the last 4 games, they've picked up some excellent results. I mean, they absolutely battered us last week as well, so I know you're feeling right now. It's a really interesting attacking team. When they're flowing, they really flow. Yeah. And we've talked a lot about the balance in that midfield that they've got with Guimaraes, Tonali and Joelinton. That really paid off for him in this game. We talked about how deadly they can be on both flanks. Obviously, we kind of expected them to address the right wing position, but Jacob Murphy's having a really good time of things lately. And Anthony Gordon out on the left, with Lewis Hall behind him, they just look fantastic, don't they? They were so threatening in that first half. And if it weren't for Amarin changing things in the first sort of half an hour, we could have been talking about a cricket score. It was really convincing. And yeah, you talked about maybe a bit of overconfidence at times and maybe them not killing the game off earlier in the first half, but it just looks like they're enjoying their football. And in such a congested period in the season, that's what you really want your teams to be doing. You don't want burnout at this stage. You want people enjoying their time on the pitch, and Newcastle are. I mean, they are ultimately the winners of this festive period, along with Liverpool, aren't they? They're the ones that have come out on top. Like, they all of a sudden are 3 points off Chelsea, and it felt like when we were talking about Newcastle just a few weeks ago, we were saying, oh, it's a shame that they've kind of dropped off. It's not really what we expected of them. They're probably going to be 8th, 9th, 10th this year. And now all of a sudden we think, oh, actually, they're probably going to push for top 4.
Yeah, it's a really settled team, and I think that midfield is the key. Like you said, Guimaraes, Tonali, and Joelinton. I think they must have looked at the United team sheet and seen Eriksen and Casemiro and just kind of gone, this game's for the taking, because they were by far the stronger midfield, and I think that's where the game was kind of won in that first half an hour. They just blitzed United from the middle, really, didn't they? And Isak, again, a great forward, a great focal point, and should have had more.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because City obviously are talking about moves for Guimaraes, and I wonder whether Newcastle will hold firm and manage to kind of fight that bid off. Because
Yeah,
with PSR and then wanting to invest in their squad more wholesale, a tempting bid could come in. But actually, if they can keep him, they've got one of the best midfields in the league in terms of a starting 11. It maybe lacks the
definitely. Yeah,
depth to compete consistently, but those three on their day will give anyone a good game. Now, when you've got aging centre midfielders who aren't very mobile and Ericsson and Casemiro facing them, yeah, of course they had a field day with them. Of course that they outperformed them, and that is something that Amarim's got to address. But in terms of Newcastle, it only looks bright because these players aren't old either. They're a
true.
squad that can really stick around and grow together. I mean, you think about it, they've still got like Botman to come back. Both
Yeah,
the
that's big.
fullbacks are really young. Obviously, Trippier started this game, but with Livramento there as well, it's an excellent option. This midfield is dynamic. Isak and Gordon, they're not old players at all. They're still yet to even come into their prime. So
Yeah.
it's an exciting squad for Newcastle. And if they manage to get themselves back into the Champions League, cement a bit more investment in the summer, we know what their ownership's capable of. We could be talking about a really threatening team again now. And they've done it slowly, but they're doing it right. And that's what you want
Yeah.
to see, isn't it?
Well, that's the frustration Newcastle fans have had, is that it is slow and that it isn't instant success and, spending money every window. And it can't be, I guess. And it's got to be incremental for a club that started out the size of Newcastle from a financial point of view, because they're a huge club in every other aspect, really, aren't they? But they're getting there. And I think getting to cup semi-finals is definitely great for them. And if they do get on to win that competition, that again could be a great springboard for them, couldn't
Huge.
it? But a team that obviously is exchanging places with them in the league at the minute quite dramatically is United. And I touched on the performance briefly from a United perspective, but let's talk about that, shall we? And
Yeah.
what went wrong and what is wrong at United currently, because so many flaws were exposed. And obviously it's not great for Joshua Zirkzee to go off after sort of 36 minutes or something, but it was clearly just not working for him. And I think Amarim was quite apologetic towards him, which was nice, but I'm sure he doesn't feel any better for it after that. But it just wasn't working at all. And that midfield, I still can't fathom why he did that, why he put Ericsson and Casemiro in against that Newcastle midfield, because it was just never, ever going to match the pace, match the physicality and the intensity. And it was so obvious within that first half an hour, wasn't it?
Yeah, and to be honest, it's not just the midfield that looked like it was lacking the pace to match them. I mean, not starting Lenny Yoro baffles me. If you're going to play this system and you play three centre-backs that aren't exactly known for their pace, so when your full-backs are trying to push up, Newcastle can hurt you so much out wide, and you're relying on Martinez or Delict to go and cover the wings. That's really poor.
Yeah.
Your midfielders can't get back and cover that ground. That's really poor. And it feels like this appointment of Amarim makes so much sense, but they've done it at the wrong time. Because if you're desperate for him to implement this new system, now isn't the time to do that. We've said this countless times. It feels like a bit of a waste of breath going over it old ground again. But I do think this game has to highlight to him that he doesn't have the squad to achieve what he wants to yet. So he has to be adaptable to that. And he made a really interesting comment about it. I think he said that, look, United weren't getting results when they were playing with a back four. So that's not the problem. But it's getting worse. So
it's definitely getting worse. We've lost 5 games in December. It's horrific.
Yeah. So you do have to consolidate it to a degree. And actually the argument is, yes, they were losing games with a back four under a different manager. It's up to you to improve that side, not make them worse. And long term, yes, this system might be the thing that improves Man United, but not this squad of players. He's inevitably going to move a lot on. And the problem that United have got now is, we're entering a transfer window now. I don't know how much they're going to be able to spend. Even if they're going to the summer, we're not talking 2 or 3 players change this team and completely improve it. It's basically a facelift of the whole thing.
Again.
Because even the best players there don't suit what Amarim wants to do. So I think it's shocking. This team, it was so poor. I mean, you look at it on paper, even. How many of those players get into any of the top 8 teams at the moment?
Not many, because they're not a top 8 set of players. And that's the problem. I mean, Gary Neville made a really interesting point after the game. He was talking about the squad, or the first 11 that Solskjaer had in his final game. and how it
Yeah.
contained like Cristiano and Varane, and it had De Gea, and it was on paper still a good team. But at the
Yeah.
time, United fans and everybody else was saying this isn't good enough for Manchester United.
Mm.
Yet it's got worse. You look at the last team under like Mourinho and Van Gaal. We had some brilliant players in those teams. We've had Lukaku, we've had Di Maria, we've had world class players who we've just chewed up and spat out. This team now is arguably the worst of the lot. And yeah, he's got a lot on his plate. We've spent a ton of money and we can't afford to do it in January. He's kind of alluded to that. We've got to sell before we buy. So I do kind of get this feeling he's writing off this season to a degree. He's almost got a series of free hits. But I guess that begs the question, if we do keep losing like this, is relegation on the cards? And I think it's the first time all United fans have gone, probably, yeah, it is.
I mean, you're 7 points off Ipswich. There's, 6 teams below you. I don't think relegation is a realistic prospect for Man United. They will pick up points through this season that other teams won't be able to. I think that's very.
It's more of a concern than looking up the table, I think. That is probably more pressing for us.
It's more of a concern that it should be for Manchester United.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I understand why Amarim's made that point, to kind of try and light a bit of a fire in his squad and to make them kind of take a realistic view of where they are. It's a bold move to talk about Man United in a relegation battle when you've only been there 5 minutes and you're the coach in charge of kind of pulling them out of that. And I do think that maybe there was a bit of naivety as to what the British press will do to a Man United manager and what it means to be a Man United manager to be making statements like that. But I don't know. I think he has to take some responsibility for this performance in particular. I don't think you can just blame the squad on this one. He picked that 11. Bizarre. He picked that system against Newcastle when it was obviously going to get overrun in midfield. Bizarre. And I think he has to show some flexibility here, because we all looked at it and thought this was the right appointment. However, we probably would have given it to Van Nistelrooy to the end of the season and tried to do it in the summer.
Yeah.
He's come in early. What he can't do is burn all these bridges, kick out the wrong people, change things over, and actually lose a lot of the credit he has in the bank by having a terrible season this year. I don't think any United fan has high expectations of him for this season and understands there needs to be a grace period where he makes this transition. But if it goes horribly wrong this season, he's shooting himself in the foot.
I agree to an extent, but I'm going to have to kind of disagree as well and say that he's almost got to kind of demonstrate that the club has made mistakes and they're not on him. I think by doing that, he's putting in players like Casemiro, who's on a ridiculous salary. Eriksen, for his age, is on a ridiculous salary. He's keeping Rashford on the bench again in this game on the most ridiculous salary. I think he's showing how poor these players are for the money that's being paid to them. Like, you should expect a player of Casemiro's salary to be doing the running, and he's just not, because he can't. So why are we here? And I think it's similar for any team we come up against at the minute. There's the desire there from the team that's even a slight bit of desire, and we are suddenly up against it. We have zero desire across the pitch. We look terrified as a set of players. I think that's kind of what he's showing, first of all. And I do agree that he needs to make that happen, really, to sort of start from the bottom and build back up again. It's going to be hard. It's going to be painful.
I think I'm surprised to hear you as a fan kind of say that, because I think I'd be incredibly frustrated if it was a case of my manager's so stubborn and trying to make a point against the board right now and it's costing my team. Because, everyone knows the faults at Man United. Everyone knows what United have done wrong over the years. You don't really have to highlight that to anyone. And how much are you willing to highlight it before you kind of come down with the ship a little bit? And I wonder how much Amarin can risk. I mean, if United finish 14th this season, where they are right now, then that's a failure on Amarin already, regardless of whatever grace period you want to give him or he needs to get himself involved. This squad is poor, but it's not 14th poor. That's ludicrous.
I don't think we'll stay in 14th, though. That's the thing. I do think we'll climb. I do think it will click at some point to a degree. But I think this is exposing the changes that need to be made. And we know now which players already, if it wasn't clear already, need to go.
That's like Redknapp-esque, though, when he used to fail to pick a striker and put 3 goalkeepers on the bench just to make a point to the board. And I don't think anyone would look at that and go, no, that's the right thing. Well, why is he not starting Kobbie Mainoo in this game? I can't understand the logic of that. And then you have to backtrack, humiliate one of your new signings and pull him off after 30 minutes to change a system that was always going to go wrong. Not one person could look at that team sheet, including Amarin, and go, yep, I'm going to get something out of this game. So what was the point in it? All you've done there is completely degrade the caliber of player that Xerxes was or Casemiro was, and you just made fools out of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that stubbornness has to change a little bit. There's a few managers in the Premier League like that right now. Like we'll talk about Ange later. Same thing. You can't just stick to this idea of what I think is best. You have to do something for your club too, and I think that's dangerous.
This game, you're right. I think this game definitely is a step too far in terms of stubbornness. Like, there's so many obvious things and choices he made with the starting 11 that just made zero sense and were obvious from the start what was going to happen to some extent. But I've heard clips doing the rounds again from Ralph Rangnick saying what needed to be done and what needed to change. And it's never rang more true, mate. And I think this is the kind of philosophy that Ruben Amorim has. He kind of thinks, look, this is not just a 5-minute job. This is going to take a few years. But I think it needs to get worse before it gets better. How worse it gets, I hope not much, if I'm honest. But yeah, this is the lowest I've felt for a while. But on that note, mate, let's talk about something actually pretty incredible, and that's Nottingham Forest going into a new year in second for the first time in about 30 years. And again, no surprise at all. They beat Everton 2-0. Had a few players missing too, made a few tweaks, made a few changes, had to go back to a back four after the back three worked so well for them. Obviously, Murillo's got a knock, so he wasn't there. But Morato came in and did absolutely fantastic. No Yates, who's been so key in midfield. But Sosa came in. Elliot Anderson sat a bit deeper and played absolutely brilliantly. Just a really great amount of intensity from Forest again. And again, on so few possession. But it didn't matter, did it?
Yeah, and that was their plan, wasn't it? Give Everton the ball, and Everton definitely don't know what to do with the ball. So that worked fantastically, and you just see the confidence that flowing through this Forest side. I mean, you look at the first goal, the fact that Wood's got the presence of mind to catch Pickford off his line inside the box as well. Fantastic finish, and that is how Forest should be finishing this year, really, with the way that it's gone for them so far. They deserve to kind of have a performance like this where they take it in their stride in such a way, because for all of Everton's kind of lack of creativity going forward, defensively, they've been really solid this year, and Forest found a way through them whenever they needed to, it felt like. If they wanted to step it up a bit more, it felt like they had that gear to go into, but they took it easy, they took it in a confident manner, and when you've got players like Gibbs-White and Wood who have the finishing ability they do, well, yeah, you're going to get results like that. So, yeah, fantastic win for Forest again.
Let's talk about the finishes as well, starting with Wood's deft touch.
Lovely.
He caught Pickford out there, but Pickford had a really good game, actually. If it wasn't for him, it probably should have been 3 or 4. But, Wood is in the prime of his life at the minute, and his finishes have been so varied this season as well. It's not like he's the big man up front. His touch has improved so much. His awareness of his teammates has got so much better. And quite often he draws the focus on him. So Gibbs-White can get forward. So Elanga can get forward. And there's no Hudson-Odoi in this game either. And they still managed to pack a real punch going forward. But Wood seems key to that. And when they brought Awoniyi on, I thought that changed a little bit. And for all we were saying about Awoniyi being their player and the hard man to replace, I think Wood is going to be even more difficult to replace the way he is now.
Yeah, and I mean, he even laid on the assist for Gibbs-White, didn't he?
Brilliant, yeah.
The link up before his goal with Elanga to kind of get that over Pickford was outstanding. And it's funny to see how quickly a player's kind of profile can change. I mean, is there a player that's had a more successful 2024 than Chris Wood? Like, he's just been fantastic for Forest. The irony is, I think it's still probably an area of the squad that they'll look to invest in next, because obviously his age profile, like you say about Awoniyi, he's not really hit the heights that we kind of expected for him at times, and his injury record has been made it really difficult for him. It wouldn't surprise me if in January, or if not the summer, Forest looked at bolstering those attacking options just in case they had an injury to Wood, for example, or this kind of purple patch died off. But maybe it's not a purple patch. Maybe we do Chris Wood a bit of a disservice and don't recognise what a good striker he is. Because his Premier League goal scoring record is fantastic, and he is someone that I think probably was categorised as a bit of a Sean Dyche player, obviously from his time at Burnley as well, as a big forward, like you say. But yeah, his play in this system for Forest has been so key, and credit to Nuno for getting the best out of him. We've seen that with Nuno before with number 9s. We saw it with Raul Jimenez at Wolves, and who knows what he could have done for Harry Kane if he got a bit longer at Spurs, I suppose. We could have turned him into the new Chris Wood.
Well, isn't that funny to see the league table now and see where Tottenham are and see where Forest are? I'm sure Nuno's got a little wry smile to himself at how things are going for both teams, as is Neil Maupay as well. Did you see his comment on socials?
Yeah,
He's
ridiculous. He's an
hilarious, isn't
idiot,
he?
isn't he?
He's an idiot, yeah. He's not at the prize. Let's just say he's not coming back to Everton anytime soon. But yeah, shocking from him. But yeah, Forest, I mean, second in the table, you're still going to have people, and Forest fans included, who are going to say that this type of football is going to get caught out eventually. You know, if you can see that much possession and try and hit teams on the counter, you've got to do it right. Otherwise, you're going to leave yourself exposed. But they're so good defensively. And again, Milenkovic was fantastic. Morata was a fantastic in this, who stepped in Murillo's absence. They've got players who can cover, and they know that now. And I think an underrated player at the minute is Matt Sells. He's one of the best goalkeepers in the league right now. He, again, didn't have much to do in this game, but when he was called upon, made another great save. And clean sheet after clean sheet keep coming Forest's way. And defensively, they look magnificent, don't they?
Yeah, I think before this game, him and Pickford were the joint top for most clean sheets in the league, and Sells obviously has kept another one here, which is fantastic for him. And it's funny because he never seemed like he was going to reach these heights when he was at Newcastle, and all of a sudden he's become a key player for Forest. And even that signing, I don't think many Forest fans expected him to come in and be their number one. They had other options floating around the club, and I think they probably would have looked at a more long-term target. But right now, why would they? And you're right, the rotation they're able to do in defensive positions is really strong. Like Nico Williams has come back into the side lately.
Played brilliantly again.
And he's been fantastic. Obviously, they signed Alex Moreno from Villa on loan at the start of the season, and he started really well. And he's finding it hard to get back in now because Williams has been so strong. Olaina is superb, one of the best right backs in the league this year. And yeah, they're rotating centre back options now as well, and they're still looking so strong. So it's funny, you're right. There is always an air of when you concede so much possession and try and counter attack, that can be quite dangerous. But they've got such clinical wingers and they've got such good attacking options that they are made for that, and it's always going to suit them. Liverpool did that for a while under Klopp, where they were just desperate to kind of get up the other end of the pitch as quickly as possible, turn the ball over, rely on solid centre-backs and move the ball quickly forward, and it worked incredibly well for them. And Forest are capable of doing that with the pace of Elanga, Hudson-Odoi, Sosa in this game. It's an excellent system, and Nuno seems to have done really well at mastering that with this squad.
I'll just interject and say that wasn't me saying that I agree with what some fans are saying. I love the way Forest play.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But I think there's a lot of kind of tempering of expectation. I think that this won't continue. But if I was a Forest fan, I'd be dreaming, because I think this could continue and they could have a really good season. If they get European qualification this season off the back of this, imagine the turnaround. That would just be fantastic. I think they've got to look higher than sort of 8th or 7th. Do you know what I mean? I think they're a better team than many give them credit for. And I think better than a lot of teams competing in that area of the table too. So yeah, I think the sky's the limit for Forest. I really do.
Come on, put your money where your mouth is. Forest going to get Champions League football this year. What are you saying?
No, I don't think so.
Probably take the top 5.
I think
to do it.
5th is definitely realistic in that respect. Yeah, so maybe if they get 5th and Champions League football's on offer for 5th place, then yeah, why not? I think that'd be amazing to see.
They got a lot of difficult fixtures out of the way already as well.
That's another thing. The only real challenge ahead is playing Liverpool again and doing it again, beating them again. And if they do that, suddenly it's a title conversation if they carry on their form, which is mad.
Whoa.
But yeah, let's calm down. Steady on. But Sean Dyche even said in the post-match that he knew what Forest were going to do, but they do it so well, there's nothing he could do about it. And I think that's the thing that other teams have got to kind of realise. How do you stop this counter when the defence is so good and when the attack is so slick? Is there an answer to that?
That is his job to find that answer. To be
It
fair.
is, but his team's not quite good enough to do it, clearly.
No, fair.
But yeah, moving on to your boys then next. Aston Villa 2, Brighton 2. I mean, this is a good point, mate. This is a good game. This was a set of very good teams playing against each other with some brilliant goals, really entertaining for the neutral. So surely you've got to be happy with a draw.
I'm not happy with the draw. No. We should have won the game. We were in a really commanding position at one point, and then we kind of lost control of it in the last sort of 20, maybe 15 minutes and let Brighton back in, and that's really frustrating. Obviously, you go 1-0 down early, and that can rattle you, but Villa have done really well at gaining points from losing positions. Even before this game, I think it was 11, so it's up to 12 now. I think only Liverpool and Man City have gained more. So once you're ahead, you kind of expect Villa to stay ahead, and they were really dominant in a lot of key areas. Like Tielemans and Kamara were excellent again. Rodgers was doing so well as he does at driving the ball forward. Watkins was making a nuisance out of himself, and it was so obvious that they needed that third goal. It was so clear what would happen if they didn't, and they failed to capitalise on a few key chances. and then Brighton go and get an excellent goal back, and it's so frustrating. I mean, there is aspects of this game that you have to be pleased with. The fact that we got the point despite losing Torres early, despite the fact we were without Cash and Duran through suspension as well. So there's a couple of key players missing. Mings came in and did a pretty good job again. Watkins showed what he's made of, really. I do wish he maybe took one more chance or two more chances even that he had presented to him. But his link-up play with Rodgers was excellent, and his assist for the goal was really, really good, and Rodgers took that incredibly well. So, yeah, it's hard because there are positives to take, but it feels hard to take them when you concede the victory so late on again.
It's great to see Watkins on the score sheet and to see him pivotal to the attack again with an assist as well. But I think for me, I'm just so impressed once again by Morgan Rodgers, who's turning into basically Jude Bellingham Mark II, isn't he? He seems that kind of player. He's always getting forward. He's always got that mentality to drive the team towards the goal. He's going to be key, I think, to this evolution of Aston Villa. And at the start of the season, we were looking at the lay of the land. You did a system, like a season preview, didn't you, for Villa, which is still up. Go and check it out. And I don't think in any aspect did you see him as being an initial starter so regularly, at least, did you?
Whoa. If you remember our pre-season predictions, we talked about ones to watch for this season. And you and Dave both picked Ahmad. Who did I pick?
Yes, you said Morgan Rodgers, but in terms of being a consistent regular starter, I think he's hit levels that we didn't expect would appear right now. But he's so comfortable as an attacking midfielder, isn't he? He drives plays so brilliantly.
Do you know what I think is the most exciting thing about him? He doesn't look perfect. He doesn't look finished yet.
True.
There's still obvious flaws in his game that I'm confident Emery will help him improve. That's the most exciting thing, that he's capable of this right now, and I can still see where I want him to improve. I mean, he took that goal incredibly well for someone who's finishing at the times can be a bit suspect. But yeah, his strength is the thing that really amazes me. I hate to make the comparison, Villa fans might say it's lazy. It reminds me of old school Jack Grealish, who would just pick the ball up and drive, and it was really hard to knock him off the ball, and the only way to get him down was to foul him. Rodgers will ride through a foul, and the amount of times you see advantage played because Morgan Rodgers is just able to take a beating and keep running forward. Yeah, he's fantastic. It's frustrating. He picked up a yellow card in this game, which means he's suspended for our next game, and it was never a yellow, so that's an annoying thing to lose him against Leicester, because we really need to pick up some form and some momentum, and I want that game to be a bit of a springboard for Villa. They need to go out there and really show what they're made of, because we have the capability to kill teams off. That's what I don't understand about us at the moment. Our goal difference makes it look like we're kind of passive in a lot of games, and it's like, oh, we'll draw here, or we'll win 1-0, or we'll lose 1-0. But actually, the way we dominate the pitch at times, particularly in that midfield area, the creativity of Tielemans, the way that Bailey is able to get forward and get at players, we should have it in us to be clinical and put 4 or 5 past the team. But
I agree.
We do seem to lack that cutting edge in the final third sometimes. And I think the fact that Leon Bailey obviously isn't getting on the score sheet this season, Watkins, I don't want to criticise him, because I do think he brings so much to this team still. And I think you can't be too critical of a guy that gets a goal and an assist in his first game back. But he probably could have had 3. The only reason he could have had 3 is because he's Ollie Watkins and his movement is so good. So give him the credit for getting the chance in the first place. I see Villa fans slating him and saying that they would rather have Duran back. It's absolutely ridiculous to me, and it's people trying to make a bit of a name for themselves on Twitter or Blue Sky by being controversial. He's one of the best number 9s Villa have ever had in the Premier League.
He's had the rub of the green, though. He had a real purple patch last season where everything seemed to go his way. Even his scuffs ended up in the back of the net. And now it's not come as easily to him. But I think the Premier League have got smarter to Ollie Watkins. It's not his fault. He's just got to learn to adapt to a different way of getting the ball in the back of the net. I don't think
I'm not even sure
take
they
him long.
have. I don't think it's that people have figured him out. I think it's his confidence, to be honest.
He's still getting less space. I think he's got less space than he had, and his shots at goal are coming from a lot more difficult angles and further out than they used to be. He's not getting as close to goal as he used to, and I think that's where, defences have kind of got a little bit wiser to him.
Potentially, but even last season, you saw him take goals from any sort of angle, and he'd hit
True.
the ball across the goal. I mean, think about that goal he scored for England in the semi-final.
Yeah,
It's an
true.
incredibly tight angle, but he relied a lot on his instincts, and that's why I think it was a confidence thing. He was willing to hit a shot first time. The amount of times I see Watkins overthink what he's doing at the moment, and he takes too long to take the shot. Either his first touch lets him down when he's running through on goal, and that's where the space is lost. Really often he finds the space beyond the centre back, but as the ball's coming through, it bounces off his heel or something, and then he's fighting a bit of a losing battle. Or he gets the ball and he could take a shot first time. He tries to take another touch and he lets the defender back in. He's
Yeah,
still
yeah.
getting the same space. He's just not being as quick to react to it. And I do think that's a bit of a confidence thing. But Emery's got that confidence out of him before by backing him and making him his number one guy. Look, I'm not saying I would, but I wouldn't be necessarily shocked if we saw a big money bid come in for Duran in January and Villa consider it.
Okay.
And then we'll see what that means for Watkins.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Before we start, give us Brighton a bit of credit. Let's just put a question to you. Okay. So you mentioned Jack Grealish earlier. What would you ever do a swap for Grealish and Rodgers going back to their old clubs? In what world does that ever happen? Do you think?
No, definitely
Really?
not. No, of course you wouldn't. The age profile ruins that question, and I think the fact that Grealish is kind of not the player that we let go. I'd always like to see him back in one capacity. Although I will say, I went to the Villa City game the other day. The reception he got and the way he acted, I'm not sure that's on the cards anytime soon, as much as maybe we thought it. But no, Rodgers. City would kill Rodgers the way that they kill Grealish. He should never be thinking about that. And he's a player whose ceiling seems incredibly high right now. I honestly wonder where he'll get to. I think he'll be an England regular within a couple of years. I honestly do. He looks so electric. It's the only thing he'll suffer from is, again, he falls into those same sort of spaces that Cole Palmer and Phil Foden want to occupy, and Bellingham, obviously, if he wants to be more advanced as well. So getting him into that squad is going to be a challenge. But he's so versatile in the way that he can play with the ball that it wouldn't surprise me if we saw him drop back to more of an 8 that helps progress the ball forward at some point.
Yeah.
He's fantastic, Rodgers.
Yeah, it's pretty versatile, isn't he? But let's talk about Brighton quickly as before we move on. So a little bit of contention about the penalty awarded for Watkins. There was contact there. Again, this argument of it being minimal contact and being harsh. But again, contact is contact. And I think that's what you need to point out. Any questions from you about whether it was a penalty or not, dare I ask?
The biggest question is why the first one wasn't given, to be honest.
Fairs, yeah.
Like 30 seconds beforehand, they should have had a penalty. No, it's a penalty. I said on Blue Sky, one of the things that it made me think of was, do you remember the one on Kane in the Euros? It's exactly the same thing. He gets to the ball first and the defender challenges him in the air and takes his foot afterwards. That's exactly what Pedro did. And to be honest, justice. Pedro shouldn't have been on the pitch. The fact that João Pedro has avoided a suspension for that ludicrous throw of an elbow in his last game, and we've got Duran out for 3 games for the challenge on Shah, that's nuts to me.
That is ridiculous. Yeah, I mean that throw of an elbow was meant to do some damage, right? Like,
it was sinister.
I don't think he like some people have said maybe he pulled out last minute. I don't think he. No. I think he knew. I think he assumed the play was right there. So
it's awful.
Yeah, not a great.
He just lost his head.
And then he gets 2 assists in this game, which is a bit of a kick in the teeth. Yeah,
typical.
Brighton's finishes were both fantastic. Adingra's goal, first of all. Brilliant. I probably allowed a bit too much space, but Tariq Lamptey's goal, you can't argue with that. That was beautiful.
Oh, lovely. He was fantastic all game as well, actually. It was really telling that Villa were really worried about the threat that Brighton were posing down that right-hand side. Yeah. And then in the second half, they changed the wingers and put Minter and Matoma on, and that gave Villa all sorts of problems. Lamptey is exactly the sort of player that Villa need right now as well. That's the irony. It's weird. Our system means that we really overload the right-hand side and we play Leon Bailey as a winger, and we don't have a winger on the left. So that meant that Lamptey was just able to just not worry about who was occupying that space, progress up the pitch, and you saw for his goal, he comes inside into the middle, and it's really dynamic in the kind of play between himself, Pedro and Matoma, and gets the fruit for it. It's a lovely finish. Really, really good finish from a player that we're not necessarily used to being clinical, but when he hits it, he really hits it, doesn't it? It's not his first amazing goal this season.
Not just the finish, but the build-up, I think, and the knockdowns and the passes were great, and it was difficult to defend against, really, and I think it deserved it in the end, begrudgingly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like I say, that spell towards the end of the second half, that Brighton started and finished the game really strong. Villa had the middle hour quite comfortably,
Yeah, yeah.
and Brighton kind of picked us off in those moments. It was a shame that we couldn't hold on to the lead, but like we changed our midfield late on, brought Barkley and Onana on, and that didn't really help us control the game. And like I say, Brighton refreshed their attacking options really, really well. Like Ruta came on, Minter, and Matoma, and the fact that Brighton have got options like that is really encouraging. I want to see a bit more consistency from this Brighton team though, because
Yeah,
are they
they're
underperforming at
good.
the moment? 9 draws this
I
season.
think so, yeah. We've seen the best of them, and when they're great, they're so, so good. And I think even Herzler looks frustrated at times, doesn't he, in his post-match interviews? And I
Yeah.
know we'll bemoan the penalty decision in this one, but I think he knows that his team could do better. So, yeah, they've got a high ceiling too, I think, as a collective.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's have a look back at the rest of the Premier League games in this final wave of the year. Starting with Tottenham 2, Wolves 2. Two teams in very different trajectories, I think, compared to what their coaches are doing and the way they're seen by their fans. And I thought Wolves did brilliantly. Strand Larsen's equaliser was beautiful, really well lashed in. I'm a bit concerned to see Cunha go off with an injury, but I mean, seeing Hwang back on the score sheet must be reassuring for Wolves fans as well. Are you seeing something positive about Wolves now? Do you think, even though this was a draw, do you think this is definitely an upturn for them?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think the manner of the draw as well is really important. The fact that they hung on, their confidence was there. They got a goal in the 87th minute to kind of take the point away from home. That's fantastic. If you think about where Wolves were just a few weeks ago, that result wouldn't have happened. And actually, there's some coaching elements that you can be really encouraged by as well. I mean, the first goal comes from a set piece, so obviously training's been effective with their new coach, and yeah, they look really well organised. All of a sudden, a team that defensively have looked quite poor at the start of the season. Okay, they conceded twice in this game, but generally speaking, their shape is a lot stronger, and that'll be really encouraging for Wolves fans, I think.
I think confidence has so much to do with it as well. They just needed, I guess, somebody to tell them that they're good enough. And I think even Jose Sarr saving that penalty from Son, I think his confidence was at an all-time low as well.
Yeah.
But he seems more like the goalkeeper that we know. But on Tottenham, obviously Son missing a penalty, going on to draw the game instead of, they should have won it really. They should have been out of sight. They'll be frustrated. 5 points from a possible 21 in December. It's not been a good December for Ange Postecoglou, has it?
No, and I've said it already. I feel like he's on borrowed time, but it's just a very Spurs thing to do to kind of keep hold of him until the end of the transfer window, not back him and then move him on. That seems like the obvious thing, and I feel for him because defensively they're struggling. I mean, they had Dragusin and Archie Gray as their centre back pairing in this game. That's obviously not first choice. Fraser Forster behind. That's obviously not first choice. So there are definite flaws in the squad, but ultimately they should see this game out. They have to be getting points. Games at home against teams in a relegation battle, if you can't take 3 points there, where are you getting 3 points from? And this system and the determination for Ange to stick to his principles, it's just costing them so much. And yes, injuries will play a part in that. Yes, the lack of transfer activity in the way that he may have wanted may cost him in areas. But the same as I said about Amorim, it's your job to fix those problems. So fix them. Don't ignore them. Because look at Russell Martin. He wanted to stick to his principles as Southampton manager. It cost him his job.
Yeah.
I know that's a different scale, but what's Tottenham's season now? Like, what are Tottenham hoping to get out of this season? They're 11th. They're going to lose to Liverpool in the Cup. They've got an incredibly hard run in January with some really difficult fixtures in there, and the North London derby in the middle of it, when their confidence it seems shot. So it's just going to get worse and worse. And we all of a sudden could be talking about them in the same breath that we're talking about Man United in.
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. It's not that bad.
They're not far off. They're only 2 points ahead of them.
They're not, but I guess you're right in terms of the project and the buy-in to the Postecoglou way. I think Daniel Levy has kind of bought into that to a degree, but it's kind of important to see how much of an impact a player like Van der Ven has on this system working.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have no replica for Van der Ven. There isn't really one in world football, so he's such a key player for them. And unless they can get that kind of player that can recover the ball quickly, because at the minute they're getting so caught out so many times, then it's never going to work, I don't think. But who knows what to expect from Spurs? At their best, they're really good. When they beat City, every player looked absolutely bang on form. But then to draw or to lose even against the likes of sort of Ipswich. No disrespect to them at all, but it's so inconsistent, isn't it? Other results: Leicester 0, Man City 2, a much needed win for City, and pretty comprehensive one as well. Anything you see there that makes you feel like City are turning a corner?
Well, one thing that's interesting, Leicester had more of the ball in this game than Man
They
City.
did. You could tell they panicked when they got the lead down. They just wanted to shut the door. So yeah, they did inevitably invite some pressure, but I don't think they looked like conceding ever.
Yeah, and is that not kind of what we're saying that we need to see from Spurs and Man United?
Of course. Yeah.
Guardiola giving away possession in a game is unheard of, but he did it and it worked. So
Yeah.
it feels like he's gone, no. We've got to do something here. Yeah, it's big for them. I think the fact as well that Savinho and Haaland scored is huge. Haaland obviously gone a few games without a goal. Savinho hadn't scored yet this season. That could be a real lift. Yeah, and he looks really good, Savinho. I think he could be a really threatening player in the Premier League as well. I'm not sure necessarily how well he suits a Man City system. And I wonder if we're going to start to move back to the days of Sane and Sterling, where City were really clinical with their wingers, and we saw him get to the byline a lot more, and whether we could see that sort of style of play come back in. Because with Doku and Savinho, they've got wingers that can get in behind teams now, and we're not necessarily used to Man City playing that way. We're used to those kind of intricate passes through the middle, and De Bruyne looking for the striker in behind, with Haaland coming in as well. So now they've got that front three that they could use. We might see a bit of a revert to type from Guardiola, maybe. And obviously the January window opens tomorrow, and inevitably they'll sign 3-4 players, I think.
Yeah, well, I think it's a question as to whether Haaland is still kind of going to be at the club in the next year or two, because he's one of these players that doesn't stick around for very long. And in some ways, I think it probably do them good to have a different striker who isn't so dominant, such a focal point. And I think the winger system would work better in some ways, don't you?
I think they could do both. I really do. Because even if you think about when Sterling and Sane were at their best, they were laying balls into Aguero. Like that can work, definitely. I think Haaland stays at Man City for the long term. I can't see him moving on. I don't think there isn't a club for him that suits him better. I just think City need to think about how they're going to bring him into games a bit more. He's a better footballer than we give him credit for. Like, I feel like Haaland set the bar too high for himself. He's the best number 9 in world football right now. He's had a difficult run of form, as the whole team have, but we expect too much from him sometimes, which Messi and Ronaldo completely ruined the conversation about football for a while, and Haaland's kind of done that to himself with the numbers he's posted in the Premier League so far. But I think he still suits his team down to a tier.
Fairs. Well, I was questioning really whether he'd stick around during City's like impending relegation to like the Conference League. That's all.
City and United relegated in the same season. Fantastic.
Yeah, City probably 2 or 3 leagues though, maybe, hopefully. We'll see. The rest of the games, West Ham thrashed 5-0 by Liverpool. Liverpool continue their incredible goal-scoring season once again. Fulham 2, Bournemouth 2. This was an exciting one. I found this one really entertaining. I don't know why I didn't push it higher up the running order, but 2 teams in very good form and in very good positions in the leagues. That was an entertaining one to watch. And Crystal Palace 2, Southampton 1, who are chasing down Manchester United in that battle for 14th spot or whatever it is. Yeah, weird times in the Premier League and a weird half a season so far. Looking back at 2024, mate, before we wrap up, as an Aston Villa fan, what would you say is your personal highlight of the year so far? Now, I've caught you on the hop with this question, but what have you seen as the standout moment as a Villa fan?
It's got to be the Bayern Munich game, hasn't it?
I knew you'd say that, yeah.
Like, I've never seen anything like that, really. That was something else. For my generation, who weren't around for the European Cup win, it's talked about so much. It's held up in the esteem that it should be, obviously, and historically it's one of the greatest moments that a club can achieve. So the narrative around that game was already so thrilling and so exciting, and to win it in the manner that we won it as well, like that goal was just superb. That's a fantastic moment. And for whatever happens in the league this season, the whole Champions League run from Villa to get there in the first place, the way they're performing in it right now, that what an excellent 2024. Like, yeah,
definitely.
It's amazing to be a Villa fan. I don't care if we finish 9th this season. If we get to the last 16 of the Champions League, that's amazing to me.
Yeah, it is. Let's not stop there, though. Let's keep looking ahead, because I think the Champions League's there for the taking for some team that's just got to find the right look of form.
Dare I ask you back what your highlight of 2024 was?
I knew that was coming.
Oh, you've got one. Surely.
There's only one. It's the FA Cup win against City. But in a weird butterfly effect kind of moment, if we hadn't won that, Ten Hag would have been sacked at that time, and the history would have been different. So I think we were talking to Amorim in the summer anyway. So maybe it would have been a different season for us now. But yeah, that moment in itself in isolation was one of the few highlights of not just the season, but the last few years. So yeah, that's all I've got to go on really as a United fan.
If not that, let me remind you of the quarterfinal as well. Beating Liverpool in the manner. That was a good moment. You guys
Ahmad's
loved
goal
that at the time.
was beautiful, yeah. I think that was the start of like Ahmad becoming a man, I guess. Yeah, it's been one of the few highlights of the season so far, to be fair. So yeah, I'll take that small grain of positivity.
You're welcome, mate.
But I just want to end the pod by saying a big thank you to our subscribers, to our watchers, to our listeners who have been a massive, massive help in us growing in 2024. Our subscriber base on YouTube has grown massively. It's almost doubled, I think, in the space of a year. So thank you, especially to Nottingham Forest fans who are always there for us. And there are many of them who listen to us. So thank you for your support too. But I'll see you on the other side, Myles. Anything planned this evening?
Not for this evening, no. We'll have a quiet one. It's the first New Year with the little one, so
I was going to say, welcome to
fatherhood.
If I
get him to bed, that'll be a miracle in itself. But
a cheeky drink at midnight and then sleep by 5 past probably for you.
I reckon I'll be asleep before midnight this time. Getting old.
Party animal, mate. That's it from us for 2024. We'll see you in the new year when we look at hopefully a new chapter for Manchester United. That would be nice. But yeah, the Premier League resumes. We'll see what the lay of the land is. I'll see you then, mate.
Cheers, bud.
Take care.